5th Hour Radio Show.
So, Buck, at what age did the outdoor life really take a hold of you? You know, the hunting, the fishing. Did you come from a family of outdoorsmen, so to speak?
Oh, absolutely. My grandfathers hunted and fished and kind of passed that on to me, and my dad did some hunting. And, you know, at an early age, I was always fascinated with the outdoors. In fact, one of my favorite shows growing up as a kid was Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that show?
Oh, yeah. I used to watch it all the time.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite shows, watching Marlin Perkins and Jim Fowler explore the world and capture animals. And so it kind of created an interest at a very young age for me to enjoy the outdoors. Little did I know that at some point I'd be traveling the world filming and producing outdoor adventures myself. So I got a BB gun for my 10th birthday, and that's when I started hunting birds and lizards and stuff out in the backyard and in the neighborhood, and developed my skills as a shooter, a lever-action BB gun.
You know, at what age do you think you really started to put forth the effort to learn as much as possible about the sport of hunting and fishing? You know, not just bass and bluegill or duck and deer, you know, but all types of fishing game.
Well, you know, as I became a teenager and got my first shotgun and got my first rifle, and my high school buddies and I would go out and hunt pheasant and duck hunt and fish the rivers and the lakes of the area that we lived in. You know, I read all the Outdoor Life and Field and Stream magazines and studied the the adventures of other people, and it became something that I developed an early interest in and has been with me throughout my entire life.
You know, I've had discussions with people over that last question about hunting being a sport or being a hobby. Coming from one of the best, you know, what's your opinion, sport or hobby?
Both.
Both?
I think there's a certain need in a human being, because we are all predators, to get out and hunt. And the enjoyment and the fulfillment of that is certainly something that is ingrained in each of us. You know, we're all predators, and even the women of the world. Classic illustration of that is go down to a department store when they're having a sale and watch those women hunt for the bargains. You know, that's a predatory exercise right there. And for those of us that enjoy getting out into the field, you know, hunting is something that is a natural part of humanity. Not everybody exercises it, but those of us that do get a lot of satisfaction from it, and not always just, killing the game, but just being outdoors, enjoying Mother Nature, observing wildlife, and communing with the great outdoors is something that recharges our batteries. It certainly does for me.
Now, when did the idea of the Outdoorsman come about?
Well, I started the TV show while I was still in college. I was a mass comm major at Southeast Missouri State University in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and did a bunch of different projects. And then the last semester of my senior year, my professor says, "All right, McNeely, what do you want to do for your last curriculum course here?" And I said, let me play with this outdoor concept I've been noodling on. Because, you know, the only thing on the air back in the mid-'80s at that time were, the fishing shows. Roland Martin and Jimmy Houston and, those guys. Virgil Ward, he's long since gone now, but he had a pretty good show there for a long number of years. And so I decided I would produce a TV show that I would watch if I was sitting at home flipping through the dials, that would have a more diverse format than just fishing only week after week, because that kind of got a little boring and redundant for me as a consumer of outdoor entertainment. So we did 4 episodes as a college project, put them on the local cable access channel, got a good response off of it, and so I decided to launch it commercially in the summer of 1985 on one TV station here in Missouri. And a year later, we took it to a national cable network, And from those very, very humble beginnings, it's grown to where the Outdoorsman is now the world's largest syndicated adventure series, airing on over 500 stations and networks in the U.S. and in international distribution.
Now, did you have your doubters, that tried to steer you away from the idea of the show when you first started?
You know what? There is always doubters and naysayers, guys that say, you'll never make it, that concept's never going to fly. And I just basically ignored them and focused on what my goals were at the time. I had no idea what it was going to evolve into. I just wanted to produce a decent show and carve out a nice little niche for myself in the industry. And the people that used to tell me that it would never fly, I don't even remember their names to this day.
Now, you said it started in 1985, so what's that now? About 30 years, right?
29 years we've been on the air. Can you believe it?
Yeah, that's a long time. That's a lot of episodes and a lot of adventures. Has the show brought...
I have grown men that come up to me now and say, Buck, I've been watching you since I was a little kid. And when I stop and do the math, I realize that, yes, it's entirely possible that these grown men have been watching me since they were kids. And, it kind of gives me a satisfaction that we've developed an audience that has stuck with it all this time.
Has the show brought you to places that you probably wouldn't have ever gotten to see without it? Are there any locations that just jump out at you that maybe you recommend fellow hunters and fishermen to try and make it to at least once in their lives?
Yes, I've had an opportunity to stick my nose into some interesting places and meet some interesting people that I never would have been exposed to if I wasn't a TV producer. High on my list is Africa. I've made several trips over there, and the last couple of years I've brought my oldest son, Max, along with me to film and hunt together, and he and I switch off between the rifle and the camera. If he's hunting, I'll run camera and vice versa. And so we've had an opportunity to enjoy the dark continent and all the variety of game and the culture and the plant life and the animal species and their abundance is unlike anything that we have here in North America. And whether you go for a sport hunting safari or a photographic safari, it is a worthwhile destination to see at least once in your life. But what I've found is everybody that's been there once, they're dreaming and scheming on how they're going to get back on the flight home.
Well, when you're on those safaris, do you have a guide with you, or have you got to the point where you don't need one?
No. In Africa, concessions are operated by professional hunters that are licensed by the government, and so you have to go into a concession where these guys have lodges and accommodations set up, and you stage your hunts, out of their base of operations. So that is certainly an important part of Africa, because when you go into the bush, there's dangerous animals that can and will kill you if you make a mistake. So having fully qualified professional hunters to run the operation and be your backup is an absolute must.
Well, that was actually something I was going to ask you. While you were over there, you had any close encounters with anything?
Oh, absolutely. We run into cobras and black mambas and Cape buffalo charges and a variety of other scenarios where, it gets a little dicey at times. I've got some stories that'll curl the hairs on the back of your neck.
Speaking of cobras and snakes like that, have you ever been bit by something like that out in the field?
I have not. Knock on wood. There's certain applications, like when I'm quail hunting in rattlesnake territory, like in Texas or Mexico or something, I wear snake-proof chaps to ensure that. But, I've been fortunate. I guess I make enough noise going through those weeds to spook them out of the way. We've certainly seen them. I've killed my share. I have a lot of copperheads here on my property in Missouri. My dogs have been bit. I think they attack them, but I've not had any problems getting bit at this point.
Well, I got to ask you, what's the farthest shot you've ever taken to harvest an animal?
I have tried some long-range shooting, and I don't recommend it to everybody unless you've done some practice at it. And like anything else, the more you shoot, the better you become, and the more frequently you shoot, the more confident you are in your skill level. I've taken some long shots. I bagged an elk one time across a canyon that we estimated was 400 to 500 yards. I shot a baboon on top of a mountain one time that was close to that distance. One time I shot a chamois in the southern Alps of New Zealand that was on a mountain slope across a canyon from us, and actually blew a hole right through him. And the video proves, and it's on my YouTube channel, that he stood there right after the shot, and you could just kind of see him wobble, and then he proceeded to tumble all the way down that mountain slope, almost to the base where a little river ran.
Now, is there an animal or a fish that you haven't harvested yet that's on your list, a bucket list?
I would have to say that the one location that's still at the top of my list is the Northern Territories of Australia. And I met with an outfitter at the Dallas Safari Club show earlier this month that I've been talking to for a couple of years, and we may put that together yet. But in the Northern Territories, they've got species like the Asiatic water buffalo. They've got bantang, which is like a wild ox. And they've got a lot of variety of other species, Malaccan rusa, Javan rusa. There's some, some deer species that are indigenous to that part of the world.
Like the red stag, is that? Where's the red stag from?
Well, the red stag originally came from Europe, but he's been transplanted into New Zealand, and I've taken a couple of nice red stag there. Argentina has the red stag. I've taken a couple of nice red stag down there. The red deer of Europe has readily adapted to other countries and other environments.
Have you ever shot a grizzly with a bow?
Not with a bow, but I did do a hunt in the early 90s. We were one of the first American groups to go into Siberia, Russia, on a bear hunt, and that was a pretty primitive hunt. We stayed in tents on the coast of the Sea of Okhotsk. They dropped us off in a helicopter and came back and picked us up 10 days later, and we motored around in boats and walked into valleys and glassed. We did it in May, so there was still 2 or 3 feet of snow on the ground, and the bears were just emerging from their dens. And I took a nice bear, and some of the other guys in camp also got bear. That was quite a unique experience.
Well, you're such a seasoned hunter. Is there any time that you ever just get frustrated on a hunt?
You know, this is an interesting business that I'm in because the needs of the camera are different than the needs of the hunter. You see, I have to make sure that when I line up my sights on an animal that I want to shoot, that my cameraman is seeing the same thing and he's rolling, because it doesn't do me any good at the level that I'm operating at to pull the trigger and fill a tag unless I'm getting the video of it as well. So there has been times where the cameraman does not have the same shot, or he's not rolling in time, or a battery goes dead. Boy, I missed the elk of a lifetime one time because we stepped around a cedar tree to take a shot at a big elk, and the battery went dead, and the elk boogied off, and we didn't get a shot. So there are opportunities that have created frustrating moments and aggravation, but you know what? You just got to roll with it because that's the nature of the business.
The one that got away.
I have several stories of the one that got away, but you know what? Here's the flip side of that coin. There has been a lot of scenarios where Mother Nature unfolds her story, and we're lucky enough to catch it all on camera and get some amazing footage. And that is what I've built my career on, is being able to go into the bush, spend enough time to make sure we get enough good footage, and some of it's absolutely spectacular, and then bring it home and share it with the audience on national TV.
You know, I hunt deer, and I fish, but I have my limits on what kind of animals I would hunt if I were given a chance. You were talking about a bear a few minutes ago, or Randy was, and I just don't think I could kill a bear. And nothing against those who hunt bear. Is there certain game animals that you wouldn't hunt?
Giraffe. I have always enjoyed watching and observing and photographing giraffe. They're very stately animals, and a lot of times they just stand there and look at you, you know. And if I wanted to shoot one, it would be relatively easy, not very sporting at all. And I was on a ranch in South Africa a few years ago where the guy says, you know, go ahead, shoot a giraffe. We've got to thin the herd out a little bit. And I walked up and looked at him through the scope and decided that I didn't want to shoot a giraffe. So I turned around and walked away from that.
So it's just pretty much there's no sport in that.
Not really. Rhino's another animal that I have no interest in shooting because, you know, they got enough problems with the poachers and all the other scenarios that have thinned out their numbers over the years. I have been in the bush close to them. I've photographed them, observed them, even snuck up on a sleeping white rhino one time to within about 15 yards to take some pictures, and that big old bull never knew I was there. He slept through the whole encounter. So, yeah, you know, even if I had an opportunity to shoot a rhino, I'd probably pass on it. Simply because I think they're pretty magnificent, prehistoric-looking animals.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on these southern Illinois, southeast Missouri cougars?
Hey, they're here. Despite what some of the biologists want to say, there's no question in my mind that they're here. You know, my neighbors have seen them in pieces of property around here. Black bear are here. We've seen them around, you know, but these animals are very secretive and, for the most part, nocturnal animals. So you don't see a lot of them, and probably there are a lot more than we even realize.
You know, another cool thing about the Outdoorsman is you have the opportunity to hunt with celebrities who come on the show. Now, you were speaking of quail hunting not too long ago. Would you hunt quail with Dick Cheney?
If I was on the far left flank, yeah, probably would. You know, I don't know all the details of that, but I think that was just
I'm just joking around with that one.
Happened in the bush, and so you know what I always preach, and whenever I'm with a group of people that I've never hunted with before, like you know, on a pheasant drive in South Dakota or something. You know, I always make sure that we're all on the same page, that we're walking in an even line, that it doesn't get too staggered, and that safety first. You know, there's been several situations where everybody's cognizant to where the other hunters are, and keeping in mind that, you know, it's just hunting, that there's no sense in taking a risky or unnecessary shot if there's a chance of hurting anybody. And if everybody has that attitude, you know, safety is paramount in their minds, and you can have a great experience with no mishaps.
Yeah. You know, but seriously, though, it has to be super fun to hunt with these people. Do they contact you? How do you set up a celebrity, you know, hunting or fishing show?
Well, over the years, I've attended various celebrity shooting events. Earlene Mandrell and Louise Mandrell used to do a bunch of them. Hollywood Celebrity Shoot ran for a number of years, and so as I got to know these folks, I'd get invitations to come to these events and film and promote the event, and then I'd meet these celebrities, I'd shoot with them, do interviews with them, and then, you know, while I was getting to know them, I'd say, hey, how'd you like to go on a wing shoot in Mexico with me sometime? And for the most part, every one of them said, heck yeah, man, let's do it. So, you know, when these opportunities occur and I extend an alliance scenario to one of these fellows to join me on a hunt, for the most part, if they're not busy working, they are tickled to death to have the opportunity.
Now, do all these celebrities usually have a grasp on what they're doing before they come on the show? Now, I know as far as hunting, you got to have a license, a FOID card, you got to have your tags. But fishing, all you have to do is, you know, buy a license that day and you're good to go. Have you ever had someone on that didn't know how to bait a hook, so to speak? You don't have to mention any names.
Yeah, you know, most of the folks that I've done these shows with, I've made sure that they were competent outdoorsmen. I don't want to take somebody that's a complete novice to the game and make them look bad in front of the camera. But, you know, like there's been some guys that I've taken fishing with me that haven't done a lot of fishing before, But for example, trolling on Lake Michigan for big king and steelhead fish, you get the hang of it pretty quick, and they become pretty proficient.
Well, I got a little fun question for you. With all these shows that are on right now about Bigfoot and different things like that, have you ever encountered anything like that while you're out in the field? Or
something you can't explain?
I personally have not.
That's all you got to say about that, huh? Do you believe in that creature?
I got mixed feelings on it. There's too much evidence, including footprints and hair and multiple sightings all over the world, not just in North America, but, there's the Yeti legends of Asia, and, here the American Indian and this country, talked about the hairy man and their legends for centuries. So it would not surprise me to find out that there is indeed a species out there that is so reclusive that he's been able to remain hidden from science to this point. It would be interesting. I mean, the guy that brings in a legitimate Bigfoot for the first time would become world famous overnight.
Yeah, that would be something to have on your. Well, I guess you couldn't put that on your wall, though, could you?
How would you mount that?
That would be an interesting scenario, and then and then what would the animal rights activists do in the wake of that type of a deal? You know what? There's just so many variables to that equation that it's interesting to ponder, but you have no real answer for it because nobody's ever brought empirical evidence in that they actually exist. It's all been circumstantial and eyewitness and what have you, but that's a fascinating subject to play with, and of course it's been the subject of lots of speculation, TV shows, and documentaries for many years.
Let's switch over to a more serious, I guess a more pressing topic right now that's going on. What's your thoughts on the Second Amendment right debate going on right now in the United States?
Well, President Obama talked about it briefly in his State of the Union address the other night about how he's going to keep up the pressure to safeguard our children. Well, let me tell you something. Adolf Hitler used the same tactic to disarm his part of the world as well. He cloaked himself in child safety to get the people of Austria and Germany to turn in their guns. The reality is, if you take a gun away from a citizen, you turn him into a subject. Mm-hmm. An armed man is a citizen, a disarmed man is a subject. And that has been proven throughout the history of man. This totalitarian agenda that is implemented in some countries and seems to be sneaking up on us here in the U.S. is just basically the manifestation of evil, and we've seen it in various forms throughout the history of man. Every king, every czar, every hetman, every chief, every emperor, the first thing that he's done with any conquered people is disarm them and turn them into sheep. Now, the United States of America was founded on principles of freedom. Our founding fathers were pretty smart guys, because they studied history. They knew what had gone on before, and they wanted to create the ultimate experiment in self-determination here in the United States. All right? Our ancestors carved out a very impressive and blessed country from a raw wilderness, and they did it one shot at a time using their muzzle loaders back in the 17 and 1800s. To this day, Americans still revel in the freedom of a country that was founded on self-determination and the ability to protect yourself. The people that went out into the raw wilderness, they knew they were taking a chance. There were wild animals and savage Indians that were at odds with them, but they went out with their guts and their single-shot muzzle loaders and carved out a magnificent country. Now, these folks that believe in big government and totalitarian control seek to do the same things, only they're masking their activities in goofy little scenarios that really have no sound scientific basis. In fact, they're bias and the fear of the uneducated.
So with with that being said, the way society, the direction we're going right now, where do you see the right to bear arms in 10 years?
I really don't think that the American people will voluntarily give up their arms. Even if some despot in Washington, D.C. is able to pass sweeping gun control legislation, they're not going to be able to disarm the 90 to 100 million plus firearm owners in this country that supposedly own 300 to 400 million firearms unless they do it one house, one town at a time. And I think they'll face such a curtain of lead in support of freedom that it would be a non-starter for them. So I certainly hope nothing like that happens in this country, but I promise you, in talking to American patriots across this country, they will not voluntarily disarm. They'll have to come take it, and as the great Charlton Heston once said, you'll have to pry this gun from my cold, dead fingers.
Well, guns don't kill people, people kill people.
Well, but that's the misconception that these misguided politicians want to propagate across the country, is the fact that guns are the ultimate evil. Well, guns is the only thing keeping us free. And you take a look at those countries that have voluntarily turned in their guns or have given them up by order of the government, such as Great Britain, who's done it. They don't have handguns anymore, and those that have rifles and shotguns are heavily legislated. Australia's done the same thing in the wake of a mass shooting that happened in Tasmania a few years ago. Crime has skyrocketed because the criminals aren't going to follow any laws. They're going to continue to prey on those people, and if they know that the people are disarmed and vulnerable, then crime's going to skyrocket as a result. You look at the last few years where the concealed carry permits have mushroomed in this country. Crime has accordingly gone down because the criminals know that this is not a disarmed populace, that they could encounter a potential victim that's armed and dangerous and is going to fight back. And that, my friend, is the strongest deterrent to crime, stronger than any legislation or any laws that the government may want to pass.
Well, we at the 25th Hour Radio Show agree with you 100%. Buck, what's coming up for you in the near future? Any big projects or announcements? Or is there something else I haven't covered you'd like to address before we get off here?
Well, we've got productions coming up this year in Nicaragua. We've got a blast and cast where we'll fish the jungle rivers and hunt the fields for doves and pigeons and ducks, and then other trips coming up into Costa Rica and Mexico, and got that Australian production on the table and a couple of African deals. So we're just going to continue traveling the world, seeking out high adventure, filming it, putting it on TV, and entertaining and instructing, kids of all ages across this country. And then I've got one more project that I'm going to be launching this year called Burned Out. And I'll tell you more about it later on. But in a nutshell, 2 years ago, we had a house fire that burned our house down. So I started filming the entire tear down and rebuild of a new age, energy efficient SIP panel house. And so as a result, we've got a new TV series that documents this whole process and what will probably be the most comprehensive video documentation ever produced that we're going to put on TV later this year.
Well, we'll be looking forward to checking that out. As far as websites and social media, where can people go to get more information about you and your show?
Well, they can go to buckmcneely.com and check out my website. And I've got a YouTube channel with 49 highlight reel clips from all around the world. Just type in Buck McNeely there. And same thing for Twitter and Facebook. Everybody's invited to friend request and follow and watch my videos. And, if you have any questions or comments or ideas, love to have interactive communication with the folks out there.
Well, Buck, thank you so much for taking time out of your day today and joining us on the show.
Nice to visit with you. Let's do it again sometime.
Fifth Hour Radio Show.